Welcome in, I'm Artress, and in this video we're going to be talking about Lim, an interesting new leader from OP09 that's in the colors of green and purple. It's a 4-life leader and it has the Odyssey archetype, which, if you're wondering, I've never seen this character before, where is this person from? They're from the video game series One Piece Odyssey, which came out about a year or so ago at the time of this recording. Now, this leader is very interesting in the fact that all of the characters that it plays enter rested. And it has an activate main once per turn. You may rest 3 of your Dawn, set up to 1 Dawn from your Dawn deck as rested, then play a 5 cost or lower Odyssey type character from your hand. So this leader can cheat out bodies for really cheap and then also ramp yourself while doing it. The reason why I say it's interesting is because I think this leader might be a little slept on. It has a very interesting play pattern that might surprise you. But before we go into the deck list, please make sure to drop a like and a sub. It helps out the channel immensely. I cannot thank you enough for the support. Additionally, if you'd like to talk about the One Piece card game outside of the YouTube comments, make sure to join the Discord. The link for that is in the description below. Starting off, we're going to go right into the good stuff. We are running 4 of the 9-cost Zoro from OP06. This character is when attacking once per turn, you may pay 1 Dawn and then set it as active, and then activate main once per turn, pay 2 Dawn, set this character as active. So what that means is it can swing 3 times an entire turn for a lot. So this is your top end piece. This is the whole thing you're trying to play down. And because Lim is able to ramp up really fast, you're able to play the Zoro much quicker than you would in any other green deck. So this is why I think this whole deck has very good potential overall. Now the downside is, of course, it comes in rested, so the turn you play it, it will be tapped sideways. However, if your opponent wants to get rid of it, they're going to have to invest a lot of Dawn on a character or their leader itself and then swing into it, and you might have enough counter to be able to get out of that. And then the following turn, you can just wipe the board or go for game with this Zoro. So this whole archetype with the Odyssey stuff is great because it's kind of like little distractors along the way for you to be able to play bodies out, keep the board rather clear, and then ramp up to this big boss monster in Zoro. We're running 4 Usopp from OP09. It's an Odyssey type Straw Hat Crew. On play, if you have 2 or more rested characters, draw 2 cards and then discard 2. So ideally, you have already swung with the body, and then you can play out this Usopp and then cycle your hand. It's a 4-cost 5,000 power body, so not the worst stat line, but the more important thing here is cycling your hand, because you ultimately are trying to find the Zoro to be able to play down, and there are some ways to search it out in the deck, but if you aren't able to find it with your searchers, this Usopp can help you get a little bit closer. Then we're running 4 Sabo, a 5-cost 6,000 power body. Once again, a very important card. This is a when attacking once per turn. If you have 3 or more rested characters in play, draw 1 card. So this will be great to be able to play down pretty early on. Ideally, one of the 3 characters that you have rested is like a searcher that you played, the Law Searcher, and then the other one is a character that you played that same turn after the Sabo, so that Sabo then swings last and then draws you a card ultimately. I think that a lot of people, when they play this, they will protect this card very heavily early on, so that they're able to draw the cards that they have countered out with, and then maintain like a decent hand size with this Sabo. So I think Sabo, out of all of the Odyssey characters, is probably one of the best and one of the ones that is the most valuable in this deck. Next, I'm running 2 Sanji. This is a 5-cost 6,000 power body. It says on KO, you may put the top or bottom card of your life into your hand. Very strange text for a green character. And it says play up to 1 4 or lower character with Odyssey or Straw Hat Crew type from your trash into play as rested. So there's really only a couple of cards that you can play from the trash as rested. You have the Usopp, which we just talked about. We have a Rosinante blocker, and we also have a Lim Searcher. So any of those that have been put into the trash at some point in the game can come back out. And with this deck, a lot of people are attacking into your bodies as opposed to your life. So there's plenty of times where you will still be at 4 life because people have been attacking into the bodies trying to get rid of them. And Sanji helps you draw the card off of the life and then reestablish a body on the board once it goes. So this actually could be bumped up to 4. I've definitely seen deck lists that run it at 4. I ran it at 2 because I wanted to make deck list space for a couple of interesting techs. Next, we're running 4 of the 5-cost Don Quixote do Flamingo blocker, 6,000 power body. It says, end of your turn, if you have 2 or more rested characters into play, set this character as active. This card is amazing. It is, I would say, a staple in a lot of green decks going forward, because you can attack with it, you can be aggressive with this, and then it restands itself at the end of the turn, allowing you to have protection in the form of a blocker. And it also has a 1k counter at worst, so you can pitch this if you need to. But ideally, you're able to swing with this every turn and then restand it at the end of the turn. Another blocker that is great for restanding is the Rosinante blocker. This one is a little bit different in how it restands, and it's a little bit less of an impressive stat line. 3 cost, 4,000 power body. It says when the opponent attacks once per turn, set this character as active. So sometimes people don't expect the surprise blocker to pop up because obviously people aren't really that used to playing against Lim or Odyssey characters, but this Rosinante is one of the better cards in the deck, to be quite honest. Even though the stat line, like I said, isn't that impressive, the fact that you can just have a blocker, which is, once again, a surprise blocker pop up, if people aren't really expecting it, is really nice. So it can be brought back out with the Sanji if it does get KO'd. The other thing here is that I do see people will attack just directly into the blocker to prevent the block from being established onto a different character. And I think that's probably the best way to do it. And on top of that, if people are attacking into the Rosinante blocker initially, if it's rested, it's doing its job. So this Rosinante blocker, very pesky. It's quite the annoyance to have to deal with. And if you have this and the Doflamingo blocker on the field at the same time, your opponent will likely be very annoyed with the situation that's going on. Then we have a playset of 2Ks with the 5 cost, 5,000 power Ace. This says on play, if you have 2 or more rested characters in play, rest up to one of your opponent's 5 cost or lower characters. More often than not, this will just be a 2K counter, but there are times where you can rest a character. Maybe you're going for game, or maybe you want to rest a blocker and attack into a different character. This Ace helps you do that, but we have a better card for this situation, and that is in the 5 cost, 6,000 power body Luffy. It says on play, if there are 2 or more rested characters, choose up to one of your opponent's 6 or lower characters, or up to one of your opponent's Dawn and rest it. So this has a little bit more versatility in how you play. You can rest a character that has a higher cost than the Ace. The Ace only rests to 5. And then on top of that, you can rest a Dawn, which is super important against decks like Purple, Luffy, or like any kind of defensive decks. If they have like a Dawn open for like Gum Gum Giant, this helps get rid of that and then makes it a lot harder for those decks to be able to counter out. Next up, we have Lim, a 3 cost, 5,000 power searcher. It says on play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveal it to one card with the Odyssey type and put it into your hand, then place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. So this searches out any of the cards that we've seen so far. And then the other part of the text says end of your turn. If you have 3 or more rested characters in play, set this character as active. So oftentimes I've seen boards where there's like a Doflamingo blocker rested, a Rosinante blocker rested, and then a Lim rested as well. And then at the end of the turn, the Doflamingo blocker restands, the Lim restands, and then the opponent attacks, and then the Rosinante restands. So a lot of these characters can restand themselves under certain situations, kind of offsetting what the leader ability does, because obviously everything comes in rested, and then you can restand things with some of these abilities, which is really nice. And then to add on to the restand abilities, one of the texts that I added in was the 7 cost Eustace Captain Kidd from Starter Deck 2, one of the original manga arts. I know this is not like a manga rare, but I just love how this art looks on this card. But this is a blocker that says Dawn ×1, end of your turn, set this card as active. I have, in theory, ideas that this could work very well, and I am trying this out. I don't necessarily know if this is needed in the deck, but it is nice to have another blocker that you can use as an attacker and it restands itself at the end of the turn. If you do play this down, and obviously with the Lim ability, it comes in rested, you can attach one Dawn underneath it, and then at the end of the turn, it restands. Of course, a lot of your plays will be Dawn intensive because you are using your 3 Dawn to ramp up and then play a body, but there are times where it's like, okay, maybe playing the 7 cost Eustace Captain Kidd isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, and having a 7,000 power blocker at the end of your turn is very useful. Then another tech that I added in here was the Magellan. It's an on-play Dawn -1. Your opponent returns one of their Dawn cards on the field to their Dawn deck, and then the opponent's turn, when this character is KO'd, your opponent returns 2 of their Dawn cards on the field to their Dawn deck. So this is, I would like to add more of, but the problem is it doesn't have a counter, and there's only like certain times which you can play it. I think this is a really strong card against Shanks, being able to throw them off of their 10 Dawn. I think it's also strong against like Katakuri or any kind of yellow deck. Removing a Dawn from them kind of inhibits what they're really wanting to do by healing up and getting to like 8, 9, or 10. And the other thing here is it's strong against removal or KO removal based decks like Lucci, because if they are trying to remove this card, they are going to get punished by doing so. And the fact that it comes in rested is also good because your opponent will likely just ignore it. They're not going to attack into it because they don't want to have to -2 Dawn when this thing dies. So Magellan is a card that isn't really ran that often in Lim, but I do see its merit, at least in this deck list. Then we're running 4 of the 6 cost 6,000 power Sanji blocker, mostly just a 2K. You can use this as a blocker, but it is searchable off of this law, which is more important here. This law is a 1 cost searcher that it came out of OP09 that says on play. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck and reveal up to 1 cost 2 or greater card with the Straw Hat Crew or Heart Pirates type and put it into your hand, then place the rest of your cards at the bottom of your deck in any order. What's really important here is that it does grab out this 9 cost Zoro. This Zoro and Bonnie was always one that you wanted to get, but you could never search for because for whatever reason, it doesn't have the Supernova tag on it, even though Zoro technically falls under that title. It's only Straw Hat Crew, and so there was no way to search it out with Bonnie, like the Bonnie searcher. And we have one in purple with this law, because it can search out Straw Hat Crew, which most of these, like the Odyssey cards here, are going to be Straw Hat, this Usopp, this Sanji, I believe this Luffy as well. And so because those are all Straw Hat Crew, they're all searchable by the law. And then this Sanji, and then the Usohachi, another 2K, are all Straw Hat Crew. So the law can grab your 2Ks, it can grab a couple of the bodies that you might want to ramp with, but more importantly, it's going to grab your 9 cost Zoro. And like I said, this Usohachi here, we're running 4 of a 2K counter that is really strong. The fact that it can rest a 5 cost or lower character, oftentimes blockers. So if you have a Zoro established on the field and they have some blockers on the field, you can use this Usohachi to at least rest one of them and then kind of go for game from there. But I got to be honest, I don't think this leader is that competitive. It's got a glaring weakness in the fact that a lot of its units come in rested. So I think people tend to attack the bodies that are arrested and drain you of your hand and your resources. If you're able to keep a body or 2 alive, I think that's pretty good. In the meantime, you're kind of establishing the fact that you are ramping every turn. And so the end goal here is to play Zoro and kind of push for game. But in the meantime, I don't know if this leader would be one that I would recommend to take to like a regional or treasure cup. But I could see maybe some people doing well with it overall because it does have some potency in how it plays. Regardless, let's take it into the sim and see how it does. Going against Nico Robin, another, I wouldn't say high meta tier deck in OP09. So this would be a good test to see between these 2 decks, kind of how they interact with each other and might be which one is the better of the 2. So off the bat, we have the Zoro, which I think is really good into just yellow in general. So we're going to keep this hand. The rest of it doesn't really matter because we can just cheat things out with our leader effect. And I think the best thing we can probably throw out early might be the Sabo. And then we could play the Doflamingo afterwards so that we have a blocker that restands. Also, you could argue to play the Doflamingo blocker first so that we have a blocker ready to go. Either way, I think the Sabo is probably the better play here just to start off with. We have to be careful though because this Robin might just swing 9 into lead and we already have a low hand size. We don't gain a lot of card advantage with Lim. And if they are swinging at our life and banishing our life, that's a real problem. The other card that could be good here would be Magellan, but the fact that Robin has built-in ramp kind of doesn't matter too much because they can just ramp back up after they de-ramp themselves with this leader, or not leader, but with Magellan. We also have a really awkward spot where we want to ramp up quicker into Zoro, so playing Magellan doesn't really get us that end goal. So I think it's more important to not play the Magellan and rather just try to ramp up, play out the Doflamingo, and then afterwards, we should be able to get to Zoro the following turn because we can go ramp up to 7 and then the following turn will be at 9 to play out the Zoro. So that's good. We're not going to get the card draw off the Sabo. That's fine. We don't need it necessarily. What's more important here is just trying to get cards out of their hand and then pressuring them. So we'll go 6, we'll go 7. And the reason I didn't do 7-7 is like usually it's guaranteed if a 7 hits and then another 7 comes in. And the fact that they gave us a 2K is really good for us because that's one less 2K we have to worry about when the Zoro hits the field and starts swinging. This turn, like I said, we will be playing out the Doflamingo because Doflamingo here is going to be able to protect us. With Robin swings, we have to try to counter out of their swings as much as possible. I don't want to give them free card advantage by having them banish our life. But this turn, I imagine they're probably going to play the 6 cost Nico Robin, the one that just like rips a life off the top if you're at 3 or higher. Because they are at 7 Dawn. That's probably their best play overall. They do have a Miss All Sunday, which is a pretty interesting addition to the deck. The fact that it will ramp and draw a card for them is pretty strong because now they can ultimately be at 10 the next turn, I think. I don't mind critting a life here because I think it's more important to keep these bodies on the field. I want to have the Doflamingo as an attacker. And we can gain a card back this turn by playing out the Zoro and then swinging with the Sabo, because we'll have 3 rested units, and then we can gain a card back from that. So we'll swing with the Doflamingo first, we'll play out the Zoro, and then we will swing Sabo to draw a card. And the fact that we have 2 2Ks off of that, off the draw for the turn, and then a draw off of the Sabo, really strong there. And this Zoro is probably going to stick unless they are running Raigo, which I don't think that Robin runs Raigo. There are a few deck lists that I've seen that run it, but it's not very common. So let's swing the 5, get another card out of hand. They take that one, which is a little peculiar. That might mean that they have like an ace, because I do think they're going to 10 this turn after all the ramping. And that makes more sense, I suppose, because they can get the value. They get card advantage off of that because they're going to be able to heal back up. We'll see what they do, though. They really have to worry about this Zoro. The Zoro is going to be a huge problem for them. It doesn't matter if they're 2 life, unless, of course, they have beiges in life. But we see that there's one in the trash. So the one that is in trash means that there's less of a chance to be one in life. Of course, I say that, and with my luck, there's always one in life. That's always how it is. And the last life will be the 0-cost event, of course. So this is a very pivotal turn for Robin, though, because, like I said, this Zoro sticking can hurt. Oh, they're running Gum Gum Lightning. That's a very interesting addition to this leader. I don't see it too often, but it makes sense. And it's a good play here because it gets rid of my blocker, and if they want, they can attack all in to the Zoro. If I were them, I probably would. I'd try my hand. If I were them, I think that this is like do or die. We should be able to counter out of this attack, though, because we do have 2-2-1 that we can give them. So we'll go 2-2 and 1, and we don't mind dropping our entire hand here because Zoro is our win condition. I think what we can do is probably just like swing either 7 or 9 with the Sabo. Just want to count out here. I want to leave 3 up because the 3 is going to be used for my Zoro ability. So let's just swing 7 with lead first. Although we could have probably just swung 7 with Sabo instead because there might be a trigger that KOs the Sabo. But if there's a trigger that KOs the Sabo, that means we can just go all in with the Zoro. So I guess it's fine either way. They have to counter out of this one, which is unfortunate for them because that puts them in a really awkward spot. They're going to be down to 6 cards in hand, and then we're going to have to drain them for probably more after that with the Sabo. I would probably swing 9 with the Sabo here afterwards, or we could just swing with the Zoro as well. I think it's fine. Yeah, they just take that one, and then we'll just go ahead and just do our due diligence and close out the game. Yeah, that's all she wrote. They figured that it was probably game after that point. The Zoro just being able to stick for a turn is pretty devastating against decks like Yellow. Black Purple Luffy is going to be one where we need to find our Zoro, and they can ramp up probably just as fast, if not faster than us. So we're going to be right on par with them playing our big bodies, but we just need to find the big bodies first. So obviously we mulliganed and we didn't see it, but I think that we can at least prolong the game a little bit by having these 2Ks here. And I think we'll just use our leader ability and play out the limb. I think it's better to get a search off with this limb and see what we can get off of it, and then also ramp in the meantime. It doesn't make sense to just play out the limb because we're not ramping. So make sure you use your leader ability every turn, of course. And for them, I would imagine that they're probably going to try to swing into the limb. And if they don't swing into the limb, it probably means that they have some sort of removal, like maybe a lightning or something like that. But either way, if this limb goes, I think it's fine, because what we can do afterwards is play like a Sanji, and the Sanji will be able to get the limb back out, plus also draw us a card off of life. But this is not the hardest thing to defend either, so I think we can just give them a 2K, and if they have the lightning, they have the lightning. Yep, they have it. That's fine. That was good on them to like bait out the 2K and then get the card off the field. But like I said, we can just play out this Sanji and be okay. We can actually play out 2 cards this turn as well. We can play out the Sanji with the leader ability, and then we can play out the Rosinante with just playing it outright. And this turn, I don't know, I would assume that the Luffy might attack into the Rosinante just to get it off the field, because if they attack into the Sanji, I can instantly just block it. Yeah, they attack into it. I'm not going to defend this one. I don't think I need to. I only have 4 cards in hand, and as you can see, they are very adamant about attacking the bodies, which hurts me at the end of the day, which I want them to attack into my Sanji because I want to draw a card off of life and then put a body back out onto the field. So we'll see what they do here. At 6 Dawn, I think their best play could be putting a Dawn underneath their leader and then playing out the KO Sanji, but they just play out the blocker Sanji, which is fine. What we can do this turn instead, we're at 9 Dawn. Unfortunately, we don't have the Zoro, but let's just swing 6 first and see what they do. Let's see if they give us a block. We'll use our leader ability to ramp up 1. They give us a block and a 2K, and then we're just going to swing 8 into 6, clear this blocker. We don't need to attack their life. And they let it go. We'll ramp up. I guess we don't really need to ramp up, but we will ramp up regardless. We'll play out the Sabo, which will draw us cards, and then we will play out the Rosinante. They attack into it again. I could save it, but once again, I'm at 3 cards. I don't think I need to save it. It doesn't really make sense to do that. And on top of that, we can at least get the draw off with the Sabo this next turn. They play a Moria, which is not the best Moria in the world. It brings back 2 Beppos, but they haven't had anything to go into the trash. All right, so what we can do here is we can use our leader ability to play out this Sabo to have something rested. We should probably swing 7 with the Sanji, see if they take it. And then we can swing probably 8 with the Sabo and then 9 with lead, really putting them down to either give us a lot of cards out of hand or they go down to 0. And if they go down to 0, we have the Usohachi to rest any of the blockers that they might play. So it looks like we took advantage of that turn because like they didn't have anything that they could have defended with. And this is a really awkward turn for them because we have a couple of things that can rest blockers. We will allow that to happen because I think that's exactly what we wanted this entire time. We'll take a life and then we'll play out the limb. I think Luffy is our best bet here. Do we want to take this one? I think it's fine too, because if they do play the 10 cost, we're not in any danger of dying to it. I feel like they probably should have just attacked face with the Moria. Just to, if they're playing this 10 cost, they're not really playing it to like clear the board, right? Although I guess it's the same thing. If they attack the Sanji, then we have to take a life regardless. So I guess it makes sense. Like if they attack 9 at our face, there's a chance we just counter out. And then they definitely can't go for game here. But I feel like they're just trying to clear board, which is really interesting. Does that mean they have just like a stacked hand? They might have like so many different Gavels or Giants. Is that what it's called? Gum Gum Giant? Yeah. But I'm going to protect my board here because them attacking a character kind of signals to me that they don't have enough counter to survive this next turn. And it looked like they didn't. They're probably going to play out a Frankie blocker and then hold up a Giant or hold up one for a Giant, which is not good enough ultimately. So yeah, I think attacking the bodies, they focused too hard there. They might have should have just pressured face and they might have had a better chance. Although to be fair, I would have had the counter to survive. All right, another OP09 leader gauntlet. We are going to go against Buggy. And I think the fact that people don't think that Buggy's very good and people think the fact that Lim isn't very good could be an indication here of like who is the better of the two, or maybe who's the worst of the two. We've already beaten the Robin, so Lim is clearly better there. I'm kidding. But maybe we can beat the Buggy and show that Lim isn't as bad of a leader as people might think. This hand is not bad. The only unfortunate thing here is that Zoro could get answered by the 10 cost Buggy, or if they're running Red Rock, it could get Red Rocked. But we'll see. We will see here. I think it's fine to go ahead and just play out this Doflamingo blocker and just establish a blocker. Even though it won't restand, they might attack into it, and that's ultimately what it's there for. They could play like maybe a Pilaf. Nope, they just go 8 to 6. I'm going to let this one go because I don't want to like over counter too early and then be at a disadvantage hand size. The fact that they do play out a Galdino 3 times in a row is pretty good for them. 2 Zoros is not necessarily what I want to see here. I don't really like that. But what can you do? So we'll swing 7 and then we will swing, or we'll play out the Luffy ramping up. I'm leaving 1 open just to kind of like bait or make them think rather that I might have an event, because there are some 1 cost Odyssey events. I'm not running them, but we don't want to telegraph that we don't have them by swinging 8. In this turn, they might also just swing into the body, but I feel like they need to establish a body of their own pretty soon. So this could be a turn where they use their leader ability, which is pay 5, pitch a card, and then play a 5-cost or higher, I think, cross guild card from their hand, which would leave them with 1 Dawn to swing. So they could go 6 into 6. They go 5 into 5. We'll gladly take this one every day of the week. And then I would imagine that this is probably, what, another Galdino? They have 4 Galdinos. That'd be insane if that's the case. But at least 5 of this is going to be for their leader ability. Their best play would be maybe like a Croc into another body. Yeah, Croc into Mr. 1, which Mr. 1 will draw them to Trash 1, and then Croc cheats out, I think, a 5-cost Baroque Works or Cross Guild type character. I think it's either you can bring out. So pretty strong overall. They're looking pretty good with the 4 life and then 2 big bodies on the board. And then they have this stage which lets them put 2 cards to the bottom of their deck and then draw 2. So being able to cycle for free is insane. But we're just going to go ahead and play down this Zoro. We don't have to worry about them using their leader ability to play out the 10-cost Buggy to get rid of it, because if they do, that's not really great value on their part. They have to answer it this turn or potentially just lose. That's the huge threat of Zoro. Anytime you play down Zoro, it's like, if you don't answer this, the game could be over. And I think a lot of people, it really freezes them. Like if I see a Zoro on the field, I'm like, oh gosh, what do I have to do to get rid of this thing? Because if I don't, I am in trouble. They don't even care, it looks like. They're going to swing 7 at lead. We have to be a little bit cognizant of the fact that they could play pudding. So we don't want to take too much damage either. So we need to probably counter out of this next attack, because if we go to 8 cards in hand, that's definitely a great target for us to be puddinged at least. So it looks like they might just be trying to pressure face really hard. Because if that's the case, like if they pressure face and they try to put me to 0, they might have enough counter to be able to survive out of something here. I'm not quite sure though. I don't know exactly what their game plan would be. But once again, Buggy's kind of in a weird spot where he needs a little bit of extra support in order to be good into this meta. I think it's okay to take this, but we also could counter and just stay really healthy. And I guess it's better to just counter and stay healthy. He's running Ivankov into Inazuma. That is very interesting. I like this into Buggy, of course, but I think he should have established a blocker if he had it. But he's trying to at least, I assume, play out the 10 cost next turn. So we'll swing 7, we'll swing 9, and then we will finish out with 3 11s, because that is going to be very difficult for them to counter out of. The fact that they took the 7 is very telling that their hand is not very strong. So yeah, this second 11, I imagine, will probably go through. Yeah, it did. Wow, very interesting. They did have a Buggy, and they did have the Red Rock. I don't know if they had them from life or if they had them in hand. Either way, though, yeah, that could have been very dangerous if we went one more turn against Buggy. All right, we're going to go against Teach. This would be an interesting one because a lot of our on-play effects will likely not go into play, but we are able to cheat out bodies and then play out, hopefully, the Zoro, and then not have the 10 cost freeze it. That would be really ideal, please. But we are able to at least ramp up pretty quickly and maybe establish some bodies in the meantime. And the fact that I have a Magellan is really good here because Teach loves to get rid of bodies on the field, whether it be like swinging into them or using KO effects. And if that's the case, Magellan hopefully would be a good target for that. They might also just use their leader ability to pitch a card, and then I can't use on-play effects. And if that's the case, Magellan is still a decent card to throw down because the on-KO still applies. Even if you don't do the -1 Dawn on play, that doesn't necessarily matter. The -2, I think, is more important here. If they swing 7 into 6, I will gladly try to protect this because I do have a 2K. Very easy to protect. We want to make sure our bodies stay alive as best as possible. I think that they just want to pressure face a little bit because maybe 7 into 6 is a little bit too easy to counter out of. Of course, they black hole, so we aren't able to get the on-play effect with anything that we play out this turn. But I think that's okay. I think that's quite fine. What we can do is probably establish this Magellan. So let's swing 6, and then establish the Magellan down. Of course, they counter out of one of them and then take the other, so we're looking pretty good there. I think most of the time, Teach would like to just take most life, but if we can get cards out of hand along the way, I'm happy. It's really awkward for them now because this Teach doesn't want to attack into the Magellan. Like I said, if the Magellan dies, then they have to reduce 2 of their Dawn, and that delays their 10 cost Teach coming down by an entire turn. And so, like I said, this Magellan might do some work. We could be in for some surprises here. And I like the fact that they are attacking face. They're playing a little bit more aggressive. I think it's fine because I'm a 4-life leader. And putting me down at a low life total could be rough. So we do get the kid off of life. I think it might be worth playing it. We're at 8 Dawn. We can put a Dawn underneath it and restand it. And honestly, I've been wanting to try this out. So what better time than right now? They might have a trigger. They are pausing a little bit. Oh, that's unfortunate. It looks like it was a finger gun trigger. Probably should have just swung bodies first, but I was trying to do the right numbers, go like 5, 6, 6. But that's okay. We are able to establish this kid and then restand it. So if they decide to swing face, we can protect it pretty easily. Doubt they're going to swing Magellan, but we'll see what happens here. They also have a Van Augur. Oh gosh, they have a double Van Augur. So double Van Augur means that this kid will be KO'd because double Van Augur into Doc Q gets it down to 1 and then KOs it. Pretty annoying. And then, yikes, 8. They are really aggressive here. We might actually be in quite a bit of trouble. Our best bet actually could be like this Hail Mary play where we throw down the Zoro and then hope that they don't have a 10 cost teach to follow it up with. They haven't been searching. This entire game, they have not been searching, which has been really good for us. The fact that they've been really aggressive is very solid. I want to see if I can get a 2K out of hand and then leave the 1 up. Once again, I'm posturing that I might have a counter event. I think that it's okay. I don't think, I mean, like 7 would have been fine as well to get them down to 0. Maybe I should have swung 7 and asked for 2 cards out of hand, but I think it's okay to get the 2K out of hand here as well. And then this turn could be one where they just go really hard at face because I'm at 1 life and they have 3 bodies. They actually have a pretty good chance at lethal here if they like swing correctly. And I think they're wanting to see what I do first because swinging 5 might mean that they have the 10 cost. 5, 6. I think it's just worth countering out of this one. We'll swing another 6 and we'll counter out of this one as well. We have a lot of 2Ks, which is good for us. And this next turn, oh, there's the teach, of course, stunning the Zoro. I expected that, to be honest. And then we will play down a Doflamingo blocker, and then we will play down the Rosinante blocker so that we at least kind of stay alive. I always try to swing 5 to bait out the block first, and they don't take the bait. They are playing Orlumbus, which I like that. I like that tech in here. But what we will do is instead just play out 2 bodies here. I think it might be worth filtering our hand a little bit. So we'll also play out the Usopp because they didn't black hole us and we can filter our hand, which is nice. And we're able to get a 2K off of it as well and then get rid of the dead card in hand. We could have also played the limb, but I think it might have been better just to filter the hand there and establish a big board. They can get rid of this Doflamingo blocker with the Van Augur. They can also get rid of the Rosinante blocker with the Van Augur. It looks like they're opting to get rid of this Doflamingo blocker, which that's fine, I suppose. And then I would, if I were them, I'd just like swing huge into me. But the fact is I do have a Rosinante blocker, which will restand. So that's something that could be a little bit of a surprise factor. Yeah, they're swinging huge into me. The reason why is because I think that they are trying to just like pressure really hard. But honestly, I think if I were them, I would have done it a little bit differently. Probably Van Augur, the Rosinante, and then pressure hard elsewhere. So I think that we played it pretty well. They didn't have a second 10 cost, which is good. This Zoro was definitely going to put in work this next turn. We would have just stacked all the Dawn on and then gone in there. So yeah, we got a little bit lucky. They didn't see too many searchers to be able to do consecutive 10 costs. But this Zoro and this Magellan, more importantly, put in work. So if you enjoy Lim, or if you enjoy like the style of play that Lim has, before we go any further, I do want to recommend at least getting the Alt Art Leader while it is still cheap. I think it's around $15 to $20, which is incredibly low for an Alt Art Leader. And who knows, in future sets, Lim might get some more support that makes it really strong. I think right now, it's not necessarily a meta-defining leader, and that's okay. Not all decks have to be. Not everybody plays the game on a super competitive level. People like to play it more casually, or maybe people like to play at locals and have at least some fun with what they're doing. And I don't think Lim's necessarily an awful leader. I definitely think Lim has some place in the meta. At some point, maybe like it'd be a decent like rogue deck. But I'm going to be honest, I don't want to like lie to you guys on this. I think Lim isn't quite there. Of course, there's a lot of other better decks in the meta overall. Lim can take games off of people for sure. With the Zoro alone, this card just carries a lot of the deck. I'd say the support in Lim is more so kind of just like fodder or just like bait for people to swing into while you're trying to get to 9 Dawn and establish the Zoro. This leader will ultimately struggle against removal decks. Decks like Shanks might have a really good shot at it because of the fact that Shanks could run the 10 cost KO Shanks and just get rid of your 9 cost Zoro with just a single card. Lucci, of course, can handle Zoro no problem. And then there's blue decks like Boa, or maybe even some Dofis run like Red Rock. So keep that in mind. But overall, Lim's a pretty fun leader, and there's different like additions you can add in. Like I said, this kid didn't really get to use it too often. The one time I did, it got instantly popped the next turn. But the fact that they did establish ways to get rid of it instantly may seem like it could be a threat overall. I think this is a cool card to add in here. I want to test it a little bit more. And of course, the Magellan into the Blackbeard was really good. And I think it's a strong card overall. You might want to look to add more of these and maybe not just have Odyssey all around. But of course, you're going to have the Odyssey cards because of the leader effect playing Odyssey cards from hand. Yeah, ultimately, this leader needs a little bit more support for it to just be a great leader. But in the meantime, I would suggest playing it if you're looking for something a little bit refreshing and kind of fun. As always, I appreciate you guys watching the videos. Thank you so much for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.